Picture this. It's the year 2087, and somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, a research vessel cuts through black waters under a moonless sky. The winch groans as it hauls up sampling nets from 11 kilometers below the surface, from the deepest trenches of the Mariana, where the pressure would crush a human skull like an eggshell. The crew gathers around as the nets spill their contents onto the deck under harsh fluorescent lights. What slides out makes the lead scientist stumble backward, her face draining of color. These aren't the pale, ghostly creatures they expected from the abyss. These are something else entirely, something that shouldn't exist on Earth. The organisms writhing in the collection tanks defy every rule written in biology textbooks. Their flesh, if you can call it that, shimmers with an oily iridescence, colors that seem to shift between wavelengths the human eye can barely perceive. When the biochemist runs the first analysis, her hands begin to shake. The readout shows silicon-based compounds woven throughout their cellular structure, molecular architectures that terrestrial evolution supposedly never invented. Their bioluminescence doesn't pulse randomly like deep-sea fish. It flickers in precise mathematical patterns, prime number sequences that repeat and evolve. It's as if these creatures are speaking in a language made of light and mathematics. The most disturbing detail? Their DNA analysis reveals something impossible, trace amounts of exotic chemistry that mirrors extremophile adaptations pushed to nightmarish extremes. But here's what will make your skin crawl. This isn't science fiction. This is a scientifically plausible glimpse into what evolution might sculpt in Earth's radically transforming oceans. Right now, as you listen to these words, our seas are undergoing a metamorphosis so profound that the marine life of 2087 might genuinely appear alien to our eyes. The question that keeps astrobiologists awake at night isn't whether extraterrestrial life could exist in Earth's future oceans. It's whether we would even recognize Earth's own descendants as terrestrial life forms. The boundary between us and them, between earthly and alien, is blurring in ways that challenge our deepest assumptions about life itself. Think about what makes something truly alien. Is it origin, where it comes from? Or is it form and function, how it looks, how it survives, how utterly incomprehensible it seems? If we discovered an organism that uses fundamentally different biochemistry, communicates through methods we can barely detect, and thrives in conditions we consider lethal, would it matter if that organism evolved in Europa's subsurface ocean or Earth's future abyss? The scientists on that research vessel face exactly this philosophical nightmare. They know these creatures evolved on Earth, descended from familiar lineages. Yet every test they run screams alien with increasing insistence. The really unsettling part is how quickly this transformation could happen. Evolution doesn't need millions of years when selection pressure becomes extreme enough. Bacteria can evolve resistance to antibiotics in mere decades. Isolated populations adapt to new environments within centuries. Now imagine entire ocean ecosystems subjected to unprecedented stress. Rapidly acidifying waters that dissolve shells and skeletons, expanding dead zones where oxygen vanishes, warming currents that scramble ancient migration patterns. These aren't gentle nudges toward gradual change. These are evolutionary crucibles, pressure cookers that will forge life forms optimized for conditions we'd consider apocalyptic. The creatures that survive won't be slightly modified versions of today's marine life. They'll be radically redesigned for an alien world that just happens to be Earth. And we're not talking about distant, theoretical futures. The transformation has already begun. Right now, in oxygen-depleted zones off coastlines worldwide, creatures are adapting to near-anoxic conditions. Jellyfish populations explode in warming, acidifying seas, their simple body plans thriving where complex organisms fail. In the deepest trenches, microbes metabolize chemicals in ways that would have seemed impossible decades ago. These are the pioneers, the early adapters writing the first chapter of Earth's alien future. That research vessel in 2087 is simply reading a story whose opening lines are being written in today's changing seas. Here's where the mystery deepens into something almost cosmic. What those future scientists pull from the abyss, those silicon-laced, mathematics-speaking organisms, they represent convergent evolution with alien ocean worlds we've only dreamed about. Europa, Jupiter's ice-shrouded moon, hides a global ocean beneath kilometers of ice. Enceladus, orbiting Saturn, spews water plumes from subsurface seas into space. These alien oceans exist in eternal darkness, under crushing pressure, isolated from sunlight for billions of years. Sound familiar? Those are exactly the conditions expanding in Earth's future deep seas. Life facing similar challenges often evolves similar solutions. The creatures in those future nets might genuinely resemble whatever swims through Europa's black waters. Not because they share an origin, but because the universe favors certain designs for survival in lightless, high-pressure oceans. So when that lead scientist on the research vessel finally steadies herself and looks again at the organisms pulsing with alien light in the collection tanks, she faces a realization that's equal parts wonder and dread. The question that launched 1,000 astrobiology missions, are we alone in the universe? Suddenly seems almost quaint. We're not alone, and we never were. We share our world with the seeds of alien futures, with evolutionary potential that will flower into forms we cannot yet imagine. The oceans aren't waiting to become home to extraterrestrial life. They're becoming extraterrestrial themselves, transforming into alien worlds while we watch. And the most terrifying, exhilarating truth? We're along for the voyage into this unknown, witnesses to Earth's metamorphosis into something that future generations might not even recognize as the world their ancestors knew. The alien ocean is coming. In many ways, it's already here. To understand how Earth's oceans could birth creatures that look and function like aliens, we need to confront an uncomfortable truth. The transformation has already begun. Right now, beneath the waves, a silent apocalypse is unfolding. The oceans aren't waiting for some distant future catastrophe to reshape them. They're changing today, this year, this moment, and the changes are so profound that they're rewriting the rules of what can survive in the sea. The question isn't whether the oceans will become an alien world. It's how fast the metamorphosis is happening, and whether we're ready to witness what evolution creates when an entire planet's worth of water turns hostile to life as we know it. Let's start with ocean acidification, because it sounds almost harmless until you understand what it really means. The ocean has absorbed roughly a quarter of all carbon dioxide humanity has pumped into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution. That sounds helpful, like the sea is doing us a favor by soaking up our emissions. But here's the nightmarish chemistry. When carbon dioxide dissolves in seawater, it doesn't just vanish. It reacts with water molecules to form carbonic acid, which then releases hydrogen ions that fundamentally alter the ocean's chemical balance. Since pre-industrial times, the ocean's surface pH has dropped by about 0.1 units. That might sound trivial, but pH operates on a logarithmic scale. This represents a 30 to 40% increase in acidity. In 2025, scientists confirmed we've crossed a planetary boundary. Ocean acidification has pushed marine chemistry beyond what's considered safe for most sea life. The do not cross line is now in our rearview mirror. What does this acidifying ocean actually do to living creatures? Imagine trying to build a house while someone continuously dissolves the bricks in your hands. That's the reality for any organism that constructs shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate, corals, mollusks, crustaceans, and countless species of plankton. As seawater becomes more acidic, carbonate ions become scarce. These ions are the essential building blocks these organisms need to survive. Tiny pteropods, delicate sea butterflies no bigger than a grain of rice, are already showing shell damage in polar waters. Laboratory experiments reveal their paper-thin shells can begin dissolving within days in carbon-rich water. These aren't obscure creatures we can afford to lose. Pteropods form a crucial foundation of marine food webs, feeding everything from small fish to baleen whales. When they fail, entire ecosystems teeter on the edge of collapse. But acidification doesn't hunt alone. It's joined by warming waters that are climbing to temperatures the ocean hasn't experienced in millennia. Marine heat waves, once rare events, now strike with increasing frequency and intensity, cooking vast stretches of sea for weeks or months at a time. Coral reefs bleach white as the symbiotic algae that sustain them flee or die. Fish migrate poleward searching for cooler waters, abandoning ecosystems that have depended on them for thousands of years. And then there's the third horseman, deoxygenation. As oceans warm, they hold less dissolved oxygen. Meanwhile, nutrient pollution from agriculture feeds massive algae blooms that die, sink, and decompose, consuming what little oxygen remains. These oxygen minimum zones, or dead zones, are expanding across the seafloor like spreading shadows. By 2025, measurements show that 60% of ocean waters down to 200 meters depth have been pushed beyond safe chemical thresholds. Here's where it gets truly eerie. These aren't separate problems but interlocking conditions that create something entirely new. An acidifying, warming, oxygen-depleted ocean isn't just a stressed version of the seas we know. It's a fundamentally different environment, a chemical regime that hasn't existed on Earth in millions of years. The organisms that thrive in today's oceans evolved for a world of stable pH, predictable temperatures, and oxygen-rich waters. That world is disappearing. What replaces it will favor completely different life strategies, different body plans, different biochemistries. The creatures adapted to this new reality won't be slightly modified versions of familiar species. They'll be redesigned from the cellular level up for an environment that would kill most of today's marine life. And we're already seeing the pioneers of this alien future emerging from the chemical chaos. Jellyfish populations are exploding worldwide, their simple gelatinous bodies thriving where complex organisms struggle. They need no calcium carbonate shells to dissolve, no high metabolic demands for oxygen, no specific temperature ranges. Some jellyfish species are functionally immortal, reverting to polyp form when stressed and starting their life cycle anew. In oxygen-starved dead zones off coastlines, microbial mats carpet the seafloor, forming collective structures that metabolize sulfur and other chemicals in ways that seem almost extraterrestrial. These bacteria thrive in conditions that would be lethal to most fish, creating entire ecosystems based on chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis. They're not waiting for the future. They're already writing its first chapter in the most inhospitable waters. The deep ocean presents an even more unsettling picture of transformation. At hydrothermal vents, volcanic cracks in the seafloor spewing superheated, chemical-rich water, entire ecosystems flourish in perpetual darkness. Giant tube worms up to 8 feet long anchor themselves near boiling vents, their bodies lacking mouths or digestive systems entirely. Instead, they host billions of chemosynthetic bacteria in specialized organs, forming a symbiosis so complete the worm and microbe function as a single superorganism. These vents create isolated evolutionary laboratories where life experiments with radically different survival strategies. As ocean warming and acidification spread, these extreme condition specialists aren't being pushed to extinction, they're being given new territory to colonize. The conditions that were once confined to exotic deep-sea vents are becoming increasingly common across broader expanses of ocean. Evolution is taking notes. So when we ask how Earth's oceans could become home to alien-seeming life, we're not speculating about some remote hypothetical future. We're watching the opening act of a planetary transformation that's been building for decades and accelerating with each passing year. The oceans are turning into evolutionary pressure cookers, environments so chemically and physically extreme that only the strangest, most adaptable organisms will survive and flourish. And here's the part that should keep you awake at night. Evolution doesn't care about preserving the familiar. It cares only about what works. The creatures being forged in these new oceans, the jellyfish swarms, the microbial mats, the chemosynthetic partnerships, and forms we haven't yet encountered. These are the seeds of genuinely alien marine ecosystems. They won't be invaders from distant worlds. They'll be Earth's own children, born from waters we've transformed into something our ancestors would never recognize. The alien ocean isn't coming. It's already here, rising from the depths, and it's only just beginning to show us what it can create. Imagine waking up in a future where the word alien no longer describes visitors from space, but the intricate new forms lurking just beneath the ocean's surface. In this rapidly changing world, evolution becomes a master sculptor, carving life into shapes and strategies we've barely dared to imagine. Already, the oceans churn with selection pressures, acidifying water, oxygen-poor dead zones, and relentless waves of heat. This is no gentle nudge. It's a violent storm of change, tearing through the pages of the ancient playbook and demanding radical reinvention. What kind of creatures answer this call? and how might their bodies and minds challenge our very notion of what is earthly? Let's follow the current into the heart of these transformations. Picture squid colonies, once solitary and fleeting, now thriving as great bioluminescent collectives. Driven by survival in an age of perpetual twilight and texting in code, these squid flash intricate patterns across entire shoals. It's as though some unseen intelligence orchestrates their luminous displays, weaving prime numbers and fractals not for show, but as a form of neural communication. Locked in these shimmering signals might be tales of food, danger, or love, messages that, to us, are a window into alien cognition growing in Earth's own backyard. It isn't just communication that mutates. Every inch of anatomy is fair game. In the acidic waters that corrode bones and shells, new gelatinous bodies flourish. Creatures soft as mist yet tough enough for harsh chemical storms. Their tissues, slippery and translucent, resist dissolution by swapping calcium for silica or unique proteins. In this new empire of jellies and blobs, body plans become less about armor and more about adaptive camouflage, merging with the dancing rays of deepening sunlight or the chemical murk of lost oxygen. The horror and wonder intermingle most in the sheer unpredictability of these adaptations. Think of a gelatinous hunter lying in the shadow of a vent. No eyes, only heat-sensing pits, waiting to rush a swarm of bioluminescent prey. Or consider transparent predators whose blood glows faint green, swirling with engineered molecules that bind and store vital oxygen, helping them glide through dead zones where nothing else breathes. We can look to extremophiles among us today, spiky polychaetes and methane-munching bacteria, as clues, but evolution's ambitions here are far grander. Even the humble plankton may rise as inheritors of this new world, swapping calcified armor for networks of living silica or strange organic lattices. Within these microscopic fortresses, gene-swapping festivals become the norm, with viruses and bacteria shuffling mutations like cards in a cosmic game, driving rapid, collective leaps in evolutionary strategy. What if these swarms gained collective intelligence, their pulses and chemical bursts joining forces to sense rivals, evade danger, or exploit new nutrients as a single massive organism? The chilling thought, the line between animal and colony, between self and swarm, may one day blur beyond recognition. This transformation echoes a cosmic mystery. In Europa's ice-shrouded ocean or Enceladus's black abyss, scientists dream of life shaped under similar rulebooks. High pressures, pitch black, and chemistry most species dread. Earth's future seas might echo those distant oceans more closely than we ever thought. Each new adaptation, each shift in pigment, metabolism, or even neural structure could mirror hypothetical European tube worms or Enceladus jellies, drawing Earth's deep life and alien kin closer together in evolutionary convergence. It is as if our own world is practicing for life's appearance elsewhere. Of course, where there is mystery, there is danger. These beings of acid tides and neural lights may prove as deadly as they are fascinating. Some might wield neurotoxins that baffle our biochemistry, or spawn feeding frenzies unseen since the primordial dawn. Others could thrive on waste and poison, outcompeting what is left of familiar ecosystems, turning the food web into a labyrinth of dark, shifting alliances. Watching from the shore, future scientists might wonder, are these monstrous children saving our oceans, or conquering them? As the sun sets over this new evolutionary coastline, marvel and terror walk hand in hand. Adaptation brings survival, but also strangeness, a future ocean that blinks and pulses with 1,000 incomprehensible languages and architectures. We will peer into these waters not just to understand our own planet, but to glimpse the broader possibilities of life itself. Will we recognize Earth in the mirror that these creatures hold up to us? Or will their presence remind us that, in the unending story of evolution, the next chapter is always stranger and more alien than the last? Now we descend past the reach of sunlight, past the twilight zone where the last faint rays surrender to absolute darkness. We're plunging into the hadal zone, those trenches and abyssal plains that make up the ocean's deepest, most isolated realms. By the year 2200, these environments have become evolutionary laboratories sealed off from the surface world for generations. Here, in crushing pressure that would flatten a submarine like a tin can, in temperatures barely above freezing, in waters that haven't seen oxygen from the atmosphere in centuries. Something extraordinary and terrifying is happening. Life isn't just surviving in these conditions. It's thriving, evolving, becoming something that would make even the most hardened marine biologists question whether they're still looking at Earth life at all. Imagine a predator sliding through the absolute darkness of the Hadal depths, and you'll need to forget everything you know about how hunters work. This creature has no eyes. Why would it, when photons never penetrate here? Instead, its elongated body bristles with thermoreceptors, organs so sensitive they can detect the metabolic heat signature of prey from dozens of meters away. Every living thing generates warmth through cellular respiration, and in the near-freezing abyss, that warmth stands out like a beacon. The predator's body is barely solid, more gel than flesh. Its tissues specialize to withstand pressures exceeding 1,000 atmospheres. When it strikes, it does so with terrifying speed, its jawless mouth unfurling like a nightmare flower to engulf prey whole. There are no bones to snap, no blood to spill in the traditional sense. Just the silent absorption of one gelatinous form into another. But the true masters of this alien realm might be the filter feeders, if you can even call them that. Picture organisms that span dozens of meters, their bodies forming delicate nets of living tissue suspended in the water column. They're so translucent that you could shine a light through them, if light existed here, and see the faint outlines of their internal structures, organs that pulse with bioluminescent rhythms. These creatures don't hunt. They simply exist, drifting with imperceptible currents, their bodies catching the constant rain of organic particles falling from the distant surface world. Some biologists theorize these organisms aren't individual animals at all, but colonies, thousands of specialized polyps working together, sharing nutrients and information through chemical signals passed along their connected tissues. The boundary between individual and collective has dissolved entirely. Even more unsettling are the bacterial mats carpeting vast stretches of the Hadal seafloor. In areas where tectonic activity releases hydrogen sulfide and methane from the Earth's crust, these microbial communities form structures that look almost architectural: towers, sheets, and spirals of living cells that would dwarf a human. They don't photosynthesize. They've never seen the sun. Instead, they extract energy from chemical bonds in the toxic soup surrounding them, converting sulfur and methane into the building blocks of life through chemosynthesis. Recent studies of isolated trench ecosystems reveal something that challenges our understanding of intelligence itself. These bacterial mats appear to coordinate their behavior. When resources shift or threats appear, chemical signals ripple through the entire structure in waves, and the colony responds as one. It's collective decision-making without a brain, communication without neurons, intelligence emerging from billions of simple cells acting in concert. The most alien aspect of these Hadal ecosystems might be their complete independence from the surface world. For millions of years, the deep ocean has ultimately depended on organic matter sinking from sunlit waters above, the so-called marine snow of dead plankton and fecal pellets that feeds abyssal food webs. But in the isolated trenches of 2200, that connection has weakened to near irrelevance. Entire ecosystems now run on chemosynthetic energy, powered by the Earth's geological processes rather than the sun. Organisms cluster around cold seeps and hydrothermal vents not as exotic exceptions, but as the foundation of thriving communities. Life here has returned to something like the conditions that birthed the first organisms on Earth 4 billion years ago. A world of chemicals, pressure, and darkness where organic chemistry performs its ancient alchemy. Consider the reproductive strategies that emerge in this isolation. Some species fragment their bodies when stressed, each piece regenerating into a complete organism, a form of cloning that ensures genetic material survives even when finding mates becomes impossible in the vast darkness. Others merge, literally fusing their bodies together in permanent or temporary unions that pool genetic resources and metabolic capacity. Sexual reproduction as we understand it, the meeting of sperm and egg, the combination of parental DNA, becomes just one option among many. Some deep-sea species maintain genetic diversity through viral and bacterial intermediaries, swapping genes horizontally in a process more similar to bacterial evolution than animal reproduction. The result is a genetic fluidity that would be impossible for surface species, an evolutionary flexibility that lets isolated populations adapt with startling speed to changing conditions. The horror element here isn't just the alienness of these creatures' bodies. It's their fundamental incomprehensibility. We evolved to understand life that shares our basic constraints. The need for oxygen, for reasonable temperatures, for some kind of light. These hadal organisms operate under completely different rules. Their metabolisms run on chemicals that are toxic to us. Their sensory worlds are built around heat gradients and chemical signatures we can barely detect with instruments, much less perceive directly. Their very concept of individuality, if they have one, might be as foreign to us as our consciousness would be to them. If we pulled these organisms to the surface and examined them in laboratory conditions, we would destroy the very thing that makes them viable. They aren't adapted to these extreme conditions. They are these conditions embodied in living form. And here's the thought that should truly unsettle you. These organisms, forged in Earth's deepest darkness under pressures that pulverize and in chemistries that corrode, are probably our best models for what lives in the alien oceans we've barely begun to explore. Europa's subsurface sea, locked beneath kilometers of ice, exists in eternal darkness. Enceladus's hidden ocean, venting water into space through massive geysers, is dominated by hydrothermal chemistry. The deep oceans of distant exoplanets, if they harbor life at all, likely do so in conditions far more similar to Earth's hadal zone than to our sunlit coral reefs. When we finally develop the technology to pierce Europa's ice or sample Enceladus's plumes, we might find creatures that look startlingly familiar, not because they share our evolutionary history, but because the universe favors certain solutions for life in high-pressure, lightless oceans. The aliens we've been searching for across the cosmos might be evolutionary cousins to the nightmare creatures already dwelling in Earth's deepest trenches. And if we can barely comprehend the organisms in our own abyssal zones, what hope do we have of understanding life that evolved independently on alien worlds? The darkness holds its secrets close, and some mysteries might be too alien for human minds to fully grasp. Let's take a step back now and shift our perspective entirely. Imagine you're an astrobiologist from a civilization on a distant world, perhaps orbiting a dim red dwarf star, and your species has just developed the technology to send probes across the galaxy. Your instruments have detected a blue-green planet in a yellow star's habitable zone, and early scans reveal something extraordinary: vast oceans covering 70% of its surface. Your colleagues are buzzing with excitement because your homeworld has no surface oceans. Your species evolved in underground lakes fed by geothermal vents. To you, this planet's liquid water oceans are as exotic and alien as Europa's hidden seas are to us. Your probe descends through the atmosphere, pierces the surface, and begins cataloging the life forms in these strange, open waters. What would you find? Your instruments would detect organisms using biochemical pathways your models never predicted possible. You'd discover creatures building structures from calcium carbonate in waters that are actively dissolving those same structures, a chemical balancing act that seems to defy thermodynamics. You'd find massive colonial organisms called corals that somehow partner with photosynthetic algae, creating hybrid superorganisms that build geological structures visible from space. Your spectrometers would pick up bioluminescence in wavelengths your species can't naturally see, communication systems based on light pulses that encode information in patterns your linguists struggle to decode. Most baffling of all, you'd encounter organisms with radically different body plans, some with bilateral symmetry, others with radial or no symmetry at all, coexisting in the same ecosystems. From your alien perspective, Earth's oceans would seem impossibly diverse, almost chaotically so. But here's where the revelation becomes profound. The more you study Earth's changing oceans, the more familiar they would start to feel. The expanding oxygen minimum zones? Your homeworld's underground seas are naturally anoxic. Your ancestors evolved to thrive without oxygen. The increasing pressure and acidification in deep waters? Those conditions mirror your planet's subsurface habitats perfectly. The chemosynthetic communities clustering around hydrothermal vents, processing sulfur and methane instead of using sunlight? That's essentially the foundation of your own biosphere. Earth's oceans aren't becoming alien to hypothetical extraterrestrial observers. They're becoming comprehensible, convergent, almost predictable. The horror isn't in their strangeness. It's in their growing similarity to alien ocean worlds we've never visited. This convergence reveals something deeply unsettling about the universe's approach to life. Evolution isn't infinitely creative. It's constrained by physics and chemistry. When faced with similar environmental challenges, life across the cosmos likely arrives at similar solutions. Need to survive in darkness? Develop heat-sensing organs or bioluminescence? Need to build structures without calcium carbonate? Switch to silicon-based compounds or specialized proteins? Need to communicate without sound in dense fluid? Use chemical signals or bioluminescent patterns? The alien marine biologists studying Earth's future oceans would recognize these strategies because their own evolutionary history probably explored the same solutions. Earth is running an experiment that's been conducted countless times across the galaxy, and the results are starting to look eerily familiar. Consider Europa, Jupiter's ice-locked moon, where a global ocean sloshes beneath a shell of frozen water tens of kilometers thick. No sunlight has touched that ocean in billions of years. The only energy sources are tidal heating from Jupiter's gravity and whatever chemical reactions occur at the rocky seafloor. If life exists there, and many astrobiologists believe it might, what would it look like? Almost certainly not fish or whales or anything that relies on photosynthesis. More likely, we'd find organisms similar to Earth's hadal zone extremophiles. Gelatinous forms adapted to high-pressure, chemosynthetic communities drawing energy from volcanic vents. Perhaps colonial intelligences formed from networked microbes. The Europan tube worms, if they exist, might be evolutionary cousins, separated by billions of kilometers and independent origins, to the giant tube worms already thriving at Earth's own deep-sea vents. Or consider Enceladus, Saturn's tiny moon that somehow maintains a subsurface ocean heated by tidal forces and core radioactivity. NASA's Cassini probe flew through plumes of water vapor erupting from Enceladus's south pole and detected organic molecules, salts, and evidence of hydrothermal activity. The chemical conditions there mirror Earth's deep-sea vent environments almost exactly. If Enceladus harbors life, it probably looks and functions remarkably similar to Earth's chemosynthetic ecosystems. An Enceladian organism might use different specific proteins or slightly different metabolic pathways, but the broad strokes, the body plans, the energy strategies, the ecological relationships, could be strikingly parallel. Convergent evolution suggests that life in high-pressure, lightless, chemically rich oceans might follow a limited number of viable paths, regardless of which planet or moon it calls home. This realization transforms how we think about the search for extraterrestrial life. We've been imagining alien life as fundamentally unknowable, utterly beyond our comprehension. But Earth's changing oceans are teaching us something different. They're showing us that alien life, at least in ocean worlds which appear to be common throughout the galaxy, might be surprisingly understandable. Not because aliens would share our evolutionary history, but because the universe constrains what works. The laws of chemistry and physics are the same on Europa, Enceladus, and Earth. High pressure favors certain body plans. Darkness favors certain sensory systems. Limited resources favor certain metabolisms. Alien ocean life won't be incomprehensible. It will be convergent. The nightmare creatures evolving in Earth's future trenches are probably previews of what swims through Europa's black waters right now. And here's the final, haunting implication. If Earth's transformed oceans represent a universal pattern, then the galaxy might be filled with ocean worlds that look nothing like the Earth we remember from history, but everything like the Earth we're creating. Countless exoplanets with subsurface seas, icy moons throughout our own solar system, rogue planets drifting through interstellar space with liquid water locked beneath frozen crusts, kept warm by radioactive decay. In all these places, life, if it exists, is probably thriving in conditions that would have been hostile to Earth life a century ago but are becoming increasingly familiar to Earth life today. We're not alone in the universe, but perhaps not in the way we imagined. We're part of a convergent pattern, a universal strategy for survival in ocean worlds. And as Earth's seas continue their transformation, we're not becoming more alien. We're becoming more typical, more representative of the ocean worlds that may dominate the galaxy. The question isn't whether extraterrestrial life could make a home in Earth's future oceans. It's whether we would even notice the difference if it did. Let's return now to where we began. That research vessel in 2087, its deck illuminated by harsh lights, its crew staring in mingled wonder and dread at creatures that seem to have emerged from another world entirely. We've journeyed through the transformation of Earth's oceans, witnessed the evolutionary pressure cookers forging alien-seeming life, descended into abyssal trenches where nightmare organisms thrive in eternal darkness, and contemplated how our changing seas mirror the hidden oceans of Europa and Enceladus. Now comes the moment of reckoning, the revelation that ties everything together and forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Those organisms writhing in the collection tanks, pulsing with mathematical bioluminescence and built from exotic biochemistry. They aren't invaders from space. They're us. Or rather, they're what becomes of Earth life when we transform the planet's oceans into something our ancestors wouldn't recognize. Here's the haunting realization that should make your skin crawl. The research vessel didn't discover extraterrestrial life in Earth's future oceans. It discovered that the distinction between terrestrial and extraterrestrial has become meaningless. When you change an environment so radically that only the strangest, most adaptable organisms survive, when you create selection pressures that favor silicon-based compounds over calcium, chemosynthesis over photosynthesis, collective intelligence over individual consciousness, you're not just altering ecosystems. You're redefining what it means to be Earth life. The organisms in those tanks are descended from familiar lineages. Yes, but they've been so thoroughly redesigned by evolutionary forces that their heritage becomes almost irrelevant. They function like aliens. They look like aliens. They communicate like aliens. Does it matter that their DNA traces back to ancient terrestrial ancestors? Think about what this means for the humans aboard that vessel, assuming humans still exist in recognizable form by 2087. They're staring at creatures from their own planet that they cannot comprehend, organisms that operate under biological rules so different from their own that understanding becomes nearly impossible. The scientists run analysis after analysis, but each result only deepens the mystery. These creatures' sensory worlds are built around chemical signatures and heat gradients that humans can barely detect. Their metabolisms extract energy from compounds that would poison us. Their reproductive strategies involve genetic exchange methods that blur the line between individual and colony. Even their concept of predator and prey might be fundamentally alien, based on resource competition we can't observe or understand. The ocean has become a foreign planet without anyone leaving Earth. And here's the truly unsettling part. This transformation isn't some distant, hypothetical future. It's already underway. The pioneering species are already claiming territory in our changing seas. The jellyfish swarms, the microbial mats, the extremophiles colonizing expanding dead zones. Each generation adapts more thoroughly to conditions that would have killed their ancestors. Each evolutionary step takes them further from the baseline of Earth life as we've known it for millennia. By 2087, these trends will have compounded for decades, producing organisms so specialized for the new ocean chemistry that they'll be as foreign to us as we would be to them. The alienation works both ways. We're becoming strangers to our own planet's dominant life forms. But perhaps the most profound implication is what this reveals about life elsewhere in the universe. If Earth's oceans can produce genuinely alien-seeming life through nothing more than chemical and physical stress, what does that tell us about the likelihood of life on other worlds? It suggests that life is far more adaptable, far more resilient, and far more inevitable than we might have thought. The universe is filled with ocean worlds, icy moons, rogue planets, water-rich exoplanets circling distant stars. Many of these environments would be immediately lethal to most Earth life as it exists today. But Earth life as it will exist in 2087? That's a different story. The organisms evolving in our transformed oceans are precisely the kinds of creatures that could thrive in Europa's subsurface seas or Enceladus's hydrothermal vents. We're not just transforming Earth, we're creating a preview of life's cosmic possibilities. This realization fundamentally changes the question we've been asking throughout this journey. We started by wondering whether Earth's future oceans could be home to extraterrestrial life forms. But that question assumes a clear distinction between terrestrial and extraterrestrial, between us and them, between Earth life and alien life. What we've discovered is that the distinction collapses under scrutiny. Life is life, a chemical process optimizing for survival and reproduction under whatever constraints the environment imposes. The specific historical accidents of where and when that process began become less important than the universal patterns it follows. Convergent evolution isn't just a quirk of biology. It's a fundamental feature of how chemistry and physics constrain what works in given environments. Earth's future oceans won't be home to extraterrestrial life. They'll be home to life that has become functionally indistinguishable from what we imagine extraterrestrial life to be. So when that lead scientist finally steadies herself and looks again at the organisms in the collection tanks, when she forces herself to confront what evolution has created, she faces a choice about how to classify them. Are they Earth life or alien life? The honest answer is both and neither. They're Earth life that has transcended its heritage, organisms so thoroughly adapted to an alien environment that their origin on this planet becomes a historical footnote. They're proof that the boundary between terrestrial and extraterrestrial is permeable, perhaps illusory. They're a mirror showing us that we've always been alone in the universe, and simultaneously, that we've never been alone, because the same physical laws and chemical constraints that govern life on Earth govern it everywhere. The aliens we've been searching for across the cosmos aren't out there. They're down there, in the depths, evolving right now from familiar ancestors into incomprehensible descendants. And perhaps most terrifying of all, we're along for the voyage. Humans in 2087, if we survive the transformation we've triggered, won't be the same species that looked up at the stars and wondered if we're alone. We'll have adapted biologically, technologically, or both, to a world where the oceans pulse with alien life and the very definition of Earth has shifted beneath our feet. Future generations might look at those bioluminescent squid colonies communicating in mathematical patterns and feel kinship rather than horror, recognition rather than alienation. Or perhaps we'll have changed so thoroughly ourselves that the distinction between human and post-human becomes as meaningless as the distinction between terrestrial and extraterrestrial. The alien ocean isn't coming to meet us. We're becoming it, slowly, generation by generation, until the day when we look into the water and can no longer remember what we found so strange about our own reflections. The transformation is complete when we can no longer see the boundary between what we were and what we've become, when Earth and alien are finally irrevocably one.